Hello，大家好，欢迎回到外媒看中国，我是安博然。Today's question: Some experts say that up to 90% of Chinese could end up catching COVID-19. But is it true that millions will die? This is Reports on China. I'm Andy Borham. Let's get reporting. On Wednesday this week, China's National Health Commission announced that governments around the country should stop enforcing a number of China's controversial COVID-0 policies. Health codes, which assign each person the green, yellow, or red classification and have been a common fixture here in China, will no longer be required. Regular nucleic acid testing is no more. And perhaps the biggest sign that COVID-0 is over. Positive cases can now isolate at home with no need to head to central quarantine sites. Now, this is a huge shift, and many are warning that millions of Chinese could die as a result. But I'm not necessarily convinced. Today, I'll tell you why, and we'll also have a quick chat later on with Wan Lixin from Shanghai Daily about COVID misinformation online here in China. Now, some people online have taken the US death toll, which is around 1.1 million, and calculated by its population of around 332 million that more than 4 million Chinese will die of COVID. Now, that's a staggering amount and obviously completely unacceptable. But here's the main reason I don't think that's going to happen. Chinese people and East Asian people in general are just much more health conscious, in my view, and they know what it takes to look after themselves and their families. As just one example, I want you guys to quickly check out this biking video I made in February 2020, right as COVID first hit China. Basically, as you can see in the video, the city is absolutely deserted. There's literally hardly anyone on the streets, which I'm sure you agree makes for a pretty eerie scene. But you might be shocked when I tell you that despite everyone being locked up safely at home, there was actually no requirement to do so. There was absolutely no lockdown and people could come and go as they pleased, which is why I was out biking and recording the scene. The first ever government lockdown came to Shanghai earlier this year. Now, why is that? Because East Asians, in my view, are more than willing to sacrifice their fun and freedom for the greater good, which you wouldn't say or couldn't say is the same for Americans. Going with the same point, Americans are politically divided on the use of masks and other safety measures to protect their health. Probably half of US citizens are not only unwilling to wear masks, but many are politically against them and will even make fun of people they see who are still masked up. In China, on the other hand, there is no major movement against mask wearing. Now, another reason I don't think China will see more than 4 million deaths is because China is only opening up now at the end of 2022, 3 years after COVID hit the world, when the current variants are much, much less deadly than when the epidemic first hit. Now that Omicron is, according to many, just like a cold for most people, we simply won't see the staggering amount of deaths the US unfortunately experienced. I truly believe that in the future, the world will look back on China's 3-year lockdown as an amazing feat that saved millions of lives and helped keep the world afloat during this hideous time. The history books will look back on China's COVID-0 policy and the Chinese people's sacrifices as something quite extraordinary. You can mark my words. Now, if we look at the statistics from Shanghai's outbreak earlier this year, around 600,000 caught the virus and nearly 600 died. Now, that's a death rate of about 0.1%, which in my opinion is still too high. But as the virus has become weaker, we've seen that the recent Guangzhou outbreak, which saw 160,000 cases, didn't experience a single death. Now, I need to add that obviously I'm no expert in this area, and these predictions are based purely on my layman's understanding of the situation. But under that context, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I truly don't think China will experience millions of COVID deaths by any means. Now I want to bring in Wan Lixin from Shanghai Daily. Now, he recently wrote a really interesting piece on disinformation and misinformation on the Chinese internet regarding opening up. Wan Laoshi, it's great to have you on the show. Now, in your piece, you talked about some online rumors about COVID-19 here in China. Online disinformation, as we know, was also a huge problem in the West. So how much of an issue is it really here in China?
Well, while dramatic policy adjustments and reversal could happen overnight, most people would need time to get used to the changing reality. For instance, a friend told me yesterday that when he saw a nucleic acid testing booth, he involuntarily went up to it to line up for a test. Although PCR test results are no longer required in most public places in the city. Similarly, people would need time to be reconciled with this sweepingly new reassessment of the COVID-19 Omicron strain virus. Another reason is that today people rely more and more on social media for information, and social media can be notoriously misleading, divisive in this aspect. But people tend to get exactly the same kind of views and information that reinforce previous bias and prejudice.
For sure. So, what are some of the main pieces of misinformation going around in China online?
Well, I could observe that a considerable portion of people around me are still hesitating about being vaccinated for COVID-19 because they are harmful, they are fakes, or because traditional Chinese medicine works better. There have been many social media posts recently trying to exaggerate the miseries of COVID-19 infections. For example, 43-degree high fever, general excruciating pain, no access to medical treatment, etc. Some would also play up the so-called after effects of COVID-19 infections. So typical posts these days would go in this cynical tone. You have been clamoring for opening up for so long. Now you have got it. Why don't you go out? Why are the streets so empty? One post reads, even if it's but a common cold, not having it is better than otherwise.
So, in your piece, you quoted some experts who debunked some of those rumors. And I was particularly interested in Tang Xiaoping from Guangzhou Medical University, who mentioned that out of, I think, about 160,000 cases in Guangzhou so far, there hasn't been a single death. So, how important do you think these kinds of facts are as China moves into what is pretty much new territory?
Yeah. I think medical experts with an tarnished reputation should speak out, and only they are capable of giving a really objective assessment of the medical situation in China. For instance, the statistical description of the 160,000 COVID patients in Guangzhou should be, as you mentioned, should be reassuring and convincing. Another expert called Feng Zijian also asserted recently that ultimately about 80 to 90% of Chinese will be infected by COVID-19. Their messages should come out loud and clear and should sink in. For I noticed that quite a few people are still sharing tips on how to prevent the infection rather than get resigned to it. These simple yet strong facts would be very helpful in debunking and countering the misinformation, disinformation circulating online.
Great. Wan Lixin from Shanghai Daily, thank you so much for sharing your point of view.
You're welcome.
Okay, guys, that's it for today. I want to know, as always, what you guys think. Will China experience the same percentage of deaths the USA witnessed? Do you agree that East Asians are generally more health conscious than their Western counterparts? Let me know down below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.